Okay, well, hello everyone, and thank you very much for being here, despite the technical challenges. I would like to start by thanking the conference organizers for helping to make all of this possible, and we'll begin with a few notes. The views and interpretations provided in this presentation do not necessarily reflect those of the Canadian War Museum or the Canadian Museum of History. While the presentation will be in English, I'll be happy to answer questions and discuss matters in either English or in French. I'm joining you virtually today from Ottawa, and before we proceed, I would like to acknowledge that our museum and the place I'm speaking to you from is located on the traditional, unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe. I would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places, near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. The Canadian War Museum, or CWM, is Canada's National Museum of Military History, which it examines in its personal, national, and international dimensions. The museum traces its origins back to 1880, when it consisted primarily of a collection of militia artifacts, and it opened at its new location on the Le Breton Flats site in downtown Ottawa on 8th May 2005, which we see here. Since its opening, the museum has welcomed approximately 500,000 visitors each year, although since 2020, those numbers have, of course, been significantly affected by the COVID pandemic. The CWM is located on a significant body of freshwater, the Kitchissippi, or Ottawa River, through which it is ultimately connected to the Atlantic Ocean. It is, however, at a significant distance from the sea, and many of its visitors, both in person and virtual, will have no direct experience of or connection with the sea. The museum's location also means that some aspects of maritime museums, such as the preservation and interpretation of large vessels, are not feasible undertakings. The museum includes permanent exhibitions, open storage and display of large artifacts, and space for special temporary exhibitions and public programs, as well as a military history research center that combines the museum's library and archives. The Canadian Experience Galleries present the military history of Canada from the earliest times to the present day, as well as Canada's history of honoring and remembrance. The galleries, along with public programs and educational activities, have been designed to emphasize the human experience of war, rather than privileging prominent political leaders and military commanders or showcasing technology and weapons, although artifacts do, of course, feature. The CWM is also not a military service specific museum in the way that, for instance, the National Air Force Museum of Canada is, nor is it a part of the Department of National Defense. Instead, it's a part of the Crown Corporation that also includes the Canadian Museum of History. The CWM's permanent exhibition galleries use a generally chronological narrative that spans Canadian military history from earliest times, as I've mentioned, to the present day. There are thematic divisions within these galleries which do present and examine the maritime aspects of various conflicts and of peacetime military activities in their broader context. The CWM consequently presents Canada's historic and current engagement with the sea in a largely military history context through these permanent galleries, as well as through its collection of large military artifacts in the Le Breton Gallery, part of which is seen here. And this includes naval and maritime equipment and weapons, ranging from mines and torpedoes to a German automated weather station emplaced in Labrador by a U-boat during the Second World War, which is the collection of cylinders that we see at the center of the image here. The CWM's collections and acquisitions activities are also connected with helping to tell the stories of Canadians and Canada's historic and current engagement with the sea. These range from the personal and individual, including letters, photographs, and items of uniforms and personal effects, to larger artifacts, including weapons and equipment. For these larger artifacts, often transferred from the Department of National Defense, there is, of course, the ongoing challenge of their size, both for transportation as well as for conservation and display. In the museum's permanent galleries, Canada's engagement with the sea is presented in the context of Canada's wider military history in both war and peacetime, and not as a standalone story or installation. This holds true both for the galleries as initially created and for various additions and upgrades installed since the opening of the museum in 2005. In the post-1945 gallery, for instance, this has included a substantial update relating to the Royal Canadian Navy and Maritime Command and the Cold War, involving more recently acquired artifacts and archival footage. In the Second World War gallery, this has involved updates relating to the Merchant Navy, including veterans' post-war advocacy for veterans' status and benefits. The museum has also drawn on newer museological approaches that seek to help convey the experiences of Canadians' engagement with the sea in various ways. Staff and external contractors recently developed an immersive, if you'll pardon the expression in this context, computer animated video experience. Located in the middle of the section dealing with Canada's war at sea during the Second World War, the presentation is a dramatization of a Canadian corvette's nighttime encounter with a German U-boat in the North Atlantic, told from the perspective of the crew of a corvette escorting a convoy. The resulting animated film is based on actual events and draws on a range of resources, including published and archival sources, contemporary technical manuals, and artifacts in the museum's collections. Since the museum has a national mandate, it also engages in various outreach initiatives and activities, including online, temporary, and traveling exhibitions and educational activities that focus in part or as a whole on Canada's engagement with the sea. Some of these have taken advantage of synergies and partnerships, especially with significant anniversaries. This has included the Centennial of Canada's Navy in 2010, which led to the creation of a major online exhibition, as well as the creation of a traveling art exhibition drawing on the CWM's Beaverbrook collection of war art, and we see part of this on the right. And it's worth mentioning here that the war art collection, which contains thousands of works, includes official and unofficial art from both world wars and from the post-war period, and it's another way in which the CWM's collections can help it collect, examine, and present Canada's current and historical engagement with the sea. And this includes the CWM's ongoing involvement with the Canadian Forces Artists Program, including the exhibition of works by CFAP artists who have carried out their work while attached to the Royal Canadian Navy. The 100th and 75th anniversaries relating to the First and Second World Wars, talking again about anniversary connections, involved a number of special exhibitions, and this includes the recently closed Forever Changed, which presents the personal stories of Canadians involved with and affected by the Second World War, and that includes those who are directly or indirectly involved with the war at sea, and we see a number of their stories here. The CWM also creates and operates programs such as the Second World War Supply Line Program, which makes educational discovery boxes available free of charge to schools across Canada. It includes historical content, artifacts, and reproductions relating to various aspects of Canada's and Canadians' engagement with the sea and the war at sea in the wider context of the Second World War. Again, as part of this national outreach, the CWM has also collaborated with other museums in order to help present aspects of Canada's historical engagement with maritime activities in the sea. This includes Canada Under Attack, which was a traveling exhibition on the Battle of the St. Lawrence. It reflected many years of intensive local and personal research into the effects of the Second World War on Canadians and their local communities, undertaken by the Naval Museum of Quebec and the Musée de la Gaspésie, and this drew on local stories, artifacts, and images. In addition to helping to present elements of Canada's historical engagement with the sea in the context of the Second World War, the exhibition complemented the CWM's continuing emphasis on the personal experience of war and its coverage of Canada's military past. More recently, and this is a connection with Dan Conlon's talk earlier, the collaboration has included St. Louis Ship of Fate, a traveling exhibition whose story you've already heard about, so I won't repeat it at this time in the interest of staying timely. But it was produced by the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, part of the Nova Scotia Museum, in collaboration with the Atlantic Jewish Council and Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, and involvement, of course, from people at Pier 21 and elsewhere. This exhibition presents the story that Dan's just spoken to you about. And so ultimately, while this was not explicitly an exhibition about military history, it was presented at the Canadian War Museum because it helped contextualize the beginning of the Second World War, the nature of Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, and also it helped Canadians learn about their country's engagement with the sea in the context of ocean travel and refugees. Now, I hope that this brief presentation and discussion has helped give an idea of some of the ways in which the Canadian War Museum examines and presents Canada's current and historical engagement with the sea in the context of its function as Canada's National Museum of Military History. I would, of course, be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.